Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them.
Hello Weirdos, this is Diogo Nogueira and today's guest is none other than Hodag from Hodag RPG. You can find him at Instagram and he's an accomplished artist. He specializes in black and white artists. His work is very detailed, very evocative, and full of reference from the stuff he loves, the people he knows. And in this talk, in this chat, we talked about how kind of artists are the jocks of the RPG space compared to, the writers and game designers, how he's very interested in the natural environments in parks, and how he's always felt like a weirdo, an outsider with different interests, how he once took his tonsils out and brought it to school, freaking everybody out. We talked a little bit how generative artificial intelligence software is making us nervous and anxious and really makes us think about the sense of humanity in art. We talked about various different games we like, very different artists, from comics through RPG through everything else. He talked about how this influenced his work. We talked about other creators from the RPG space to admire. We talked so much stuff. We go into the paranormal. We talk about his religious upbringing and how this affect him in this space, in his work. And it was a lot of fun. It was very weird, and I hope you enjoy it very much. So let's keep it weird with Hodag. Hey, Hodag, welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People. And first of all, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. Another beautiful sunrise here as we're recording, peeking through my window. So we're recording very, very early for you and very late for me. So, but yeah, how's it going? How are you today?
I'm good. I stayed late last night watching the Spine of Night animation. Took advantage that my kid is home and my wife is traveling. She doesn't like to see like horror and gore and stuff, and it was really fun. So I stayed up late and I woke up like half an hour before this, and yeah, it's cool. And you said about the sunrise, and we were talking a little bit before we started recording this, that you always stay. You're like a night person. And I was gonna ask, do you always watch the sunrise, or do you sometimes watch it for renewal or something?
I feel very fortunate. I'm a person who usually sees the sunset and always sees the sunrise. So it's good. I mean, I don't normally like, if I know it's going to be for a particularly beautiful day, or sometimes you just go outside and do the normal daily chores of, letting the animals go outside and everything. And, it's just a really beautiful morning. It's always a nice thing. So, but yeah, it's interesting to have that sort of, get to see the sunset and sunrise. So yeah, it's not bad. And then I sleep during the hottest part of the day during the summer. So that's not bad at all. You can't beat that. Yeah.
Yeah,
as long as the air conditioning stays on.
Yeah, we have terrible summers here. Yeah, that would be a nice thing. Maybe work at night because it gets too hot.
I'm a creature of the night, definitely. So
yeah, I always say that. Like I like to stay in the shadows,
Yeah. So, but
Yeah. Well, Hodag, I always ask people who come here for them to introduce themselves, because we always hear these bios and stuff, but I like to hear from the mouth of the people who come here. Who is Hodag? What do you do? And if you can share a small detail about yourself, would be either the way you do coffee, a funny hat you use, or any ritual you might have.
I've been a big fan of the podcast, so you'd think I'd be better prepared for this. But so I'm Hodag RPG. I have lived a bunch of places in Wisconsin, but I call in other states. I'm currently an expatriate, so I don't live in Wisconsin anymore, but I still have a bunch of family and friends up there, and but yeah, I claim Sheboygan as my hometown. That was the first place that I ever really felt like I was accepted and welcome and had a good thing. So Sheboygan is my sort of place where I've chosen to be from, I guess. But so yeah, so that's pretty much my backstory, I guess. I lived a bunch of different places, lived in a couple of states, and yeah, I mean, I don't have I'm a very chaotic person. I don't really have a ritual in regards to both my own personal life and or my sort of artistic abilities or artistic life. So yeah, it's just kind of very slapdash and spur of the moment. And yeah, I try not to plan too far ahead with stuff because there's going to be a monkey wrench thrown in no matter what happens. So it's by my nature, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it's kind of hard to make plans when that's the case.
Yeah. I feel I can understand you because I was always like this. But I don't know, that gave me a lot of anxiety. So I started learning something regularities could help me. And I don't know how you feel about this because like I always did that spirit of the moment. Oh, I'll write when I can, or this is when I can, when open times, and every time those didn't match, I didn't have these opportunities, I would get frustrated. So I started developing some methods to give me some grounding, I would say.
Yeah, I would say that like my artistic sort of ability and talent, I guess, is more like a spigot where I could just like turn it on when you know what I mean? Like I just have I always liken it to like the Flash in DC Comics where he taps into the Speed Force, he can enter the Speed Force. And that's kind of how it is with my artistic ability, where it's kind of like or if I'm writing or if I'm drawing or whatever, it's always there. It's latent. It's just waiting for me to access that part of myself. So I guess it's almost like if I were a spellcaster, I wouldn't be like a wizard or a warlock or something. I'd be a sorcerer where it's just sort of internal. It's
I
it's
see, yeah.
uh it's a power that I conjure up for myself, not something or tap into, not something that I need to study or need to. And obviously, the more you do something, the more you're going to get better at it. So maybe I've just attained that point. I still have
Yeah.
a lot to learn, obviously. So it's not like I don't know if I'm just, this is going to be a jumble. I'm a very chaotic person, but
Yeah.
what you're saying is that my philosophy is kind of like, uh, well, it's like build a foundation, and once you have that foundation, you're always constantly building on top of it. And I used to Ursa Minor, who I created Hodag with. May he rest in peace. He passed away 10 years ago in December.
Wow.
His philosophy was always the Bruce Lee sort of hack away at the unessential. That was he viewed his life as a granite cube or something that he was chipping away at. And I always viewed my life as uh, many blocks of granite that I was stacking on top of one another. But that's my personality. I'm a maximalist. I believe in, maybe, my disorder causes a lot of problems in my own personal life. But it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't value being organized. And it's probably very rude of me to be that way, but that's just something internally that I struggle with is any kind of organizational skills or anything like that, which is why I'm constantly, kind of, but it's also good in another way too, because it allows me to have freedom over the creative process in a way that I think a lot of people that are more ordered. And also too, I'm an artist. So like we're kind of the jocks of the RPG space, where it's like you've got the brains
Are
and
we?
yeah, I think that, yeah, that's how I always joke around with if I'm talking to, Ava or Birdman or any of those people where I'm always like, telling them, I was like, yeah, we're the jocks. We're, the people, we're meatheads. We don't need to be like planning and doing other stuff. We just sit down at the art table and, kind of draw. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Now thinking about some artists I know that kind of makes sense. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Talking about being a jock, do you practice any sports or any kind of physical activity?
No, God, no, 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 no. I'm an
God, no.
indoor. No, 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 no. I mean, I'm have the same body type as the Ox King from Dragon Ball Z. So they were always like, I went to three different high schools, and so the football coach would always see me, and music would start playing, and I'd be in slow motion with the wind blowing in my hair, and then he'd see me walk right past the table and go sign up for Quiz Bowl or chess club or any of the other more athletic pursuits because I was not but
Yeah.
I'm a big guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah. I
yeah,
completely
yeah,
understand. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
I never really liked sports. I'm just now doing some exercise for like self-care and stuff. But yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
Uh,
as we age, that's very
uh,
important. So it's kind
yeah.
of one of those things where it's like, yeah, I do like, I try to get my steps in, which, has been kind of
Do
a
you like to go for
hard.
a walk? I was reading
Yeah. I
about
mean, I
creativity and
really,
art, and I always
I
say
love
walking.
walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, walking's great. It's like I do a lot of like kind of walking around, but I do a lot of walking for pleasure too. Just
Yeah.
because it's kind of like one of those things where it's like the visual stimulation and then also too like I don't really like to go too far off the path. I'm definitely a person who has a great reverence for nature. I grew up on almost a 1,000 acre farm,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
I've had, but I to quote Slipknot, I did my time and I want out. I'm not interested in in urban, or I'm sorry, in a rural setting. So I enjoy suburban living and suburban walks. I will go through a park or something like that. That's very enriching to me, but I'm not gonna go off and go hiking or anything like that. That's not something that appeals
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah. I mean,
I do love nature, but yeah, as long as there's a
yeah.
walking trail and I'll go camping if it's in a cabin or something, but I'm not roughing it out in the woods in a tent or anything like that. That's a young man's game.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I dream about doing this kind of stuff. I don't know if I will be able to, if I'm too old for this and stuff. There was this solo RPG called Truth Hiking or something like this. It was the first
uh,
RPG that I read, and I thought, wow, I gotta go out and do some hiking. It was the first RPG I read, and it made me want to do physical exercise. It was something
yeah.
else. Yeah, because
uh,
here in Brazil is criminality and stuff. It's too out of hand for me. But there in the
mm,
United States, they have these parks that you can go for like trails for like 1 or 2 weeks, and then you just stay in
yeah,
the park doing, and you cross states, and it talks about how this like trail magic, how people would leave rations on the trail for you to find and help each other, and they create like trail names, and it felt to me like this kind of this magical in nature world of, I don't know, collaboration. Uh, at least in paper, like reading sounded very, very cool. And it's something that I would love to do. I don't know if I'll ever be able to, but yeah, sounds interesting.
yeah, definitely, definitely, yeah. Risk versus reward, I guess,
Yeah.
that way. But yeah, a lot of our national parks and state parks are very, very safe if you obey the rules,
Yeah.
which are common sense usually. So there's normally not a, but yeah, one thing I can really say is that I've lived in a few states that have had really, really, really great state parks. And I've been able to go to a few national parks that were also very, very awesome. I got to go to Yellowstone when I was a younger person, and that was very fun. And I got to see, I love buffalo, so it was like cool to see a buffalo in real life. So,
Nice.
but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Lots of fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, Hodag, starting talking weird and stuff. Could you try to define the weird for you, and why do you seek it in your work, in your life?
I don't think that I've ever sought weird. I think that weird, this is going to sound very pretentious, but weird has just always been kind of part of me. You know, when I was a kid, I was, considered to be very, I don't know if annoying is the right word, but I always felt a kinship with characters on television like Kimmy Gibbler from Full House or Steve Urkel from Family Matters, or any of those kids that were considered annoying or kind of offbeat, or were kind of a thorn in the adult side because of their weird side tangents or whatever. The TV character off of the Reboot cartoon. I always felt it was constantly switching channels. I felt a deep kinship with those kind of characters because, I just was always kind of looking at things from a kind of a different perspective, or trying to be, funny or different, or, kind of whatever, but not on purpose, just, trying to be as authentic as I could. And I guess at my core, I'm a deeply weird person. So I definitely broke a lot of norms, social norms, and stuff in school, and they just had a rough time where I was, polite and nice to all the adults around me, but also too, just one of those kind of weird, very weird kids, very weird. So
Yeah. Could you
yeah.
give us any example, or do you remember any of those times you broke norms or social expectations as a kid?
Yeah, well, I was kind of a different kid, and I remember I got my tonsils out and I brought them in for show and tell, but being the chaotic person that I am, of course I wasn't going to remember to take them home, right? So I had my tonsils removed, and I brought them in for show and tell because they allowed me to keep the tonsils, which I guess I
Yeah.
don't do anymore. It's like a biohazard thing. But
Oh
this
yeah.
is back in the 90s. This is back in the early 90s. Yeah, so I guess I don't know if that's true. Someone was telling me, I
Yeah.
was at a party in my 20s, and someone was telling me that they don't allow people to take home their removed
Okay.
organs or whatever anymore. And so, anyways, but I had this cup of sealed cup of tonsils, and I had it in the back of my desk, and being the chaotic kid that I am, I'm shoving papers into my desk every day, leaving them in
Yeah.
there. You get the glue, do the thing with you put the glue on your hand, and then it creates sort of a fake skin, and then you like rub the fake skin off of your hand, and you pretend like you're melting while your teacher's droning on about something you already know. And so anyways,
Yeah.
so my desk is full of these like fake like hand scrapings, and these papers, construction paper projects, and the school materials I didn't turn in. And so one day at the beginning of the class, she tells the group of popular girls that I sat near. She said, "Okay, you're going to help him clean out his desk." And so they're pulling stuff out of my desk because she's like, "This is just ridiculous. Like, you've got all kinds of papers and stuff in here, and like your weird hand, fake skin." And so anyway, as they're pulling it out, they uncover the tonsils back there, and I guess like they had forgotten or whatever, but like everybody was so grossed out by this that like I had these tonsils in my desk or whatever. And it was like, and I like, in a normal context, I guess, like, I could have been shamed by that, but I didn't. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was the funniest thing that ever happened. The fact that it got a reaction, the fact that they were grossed out by it, I just thought that was wonderful. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just, kind of a weird kid. I was homeschooled for a while, and that just certainly didn't help me make me any more well-adjusted in, society. It just made me really crave, when I did get the ability to talk to people or be in social situations, just made me crave that really heavily. So, I mean, I don't know. And then, of course, then when I was interacting with people, I'd be even more weird and off base. So I don't know. I don't know. It's just, a personal, I guess, again, just it comes up from inside me. It's not, something that I really control or think about much. I just
Yeah.
try to be
I mean,
authentic.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us is like this too. Like I remember I was a kid, and now I'm thinking about that, maybe because I'm going through a process of diagnosis of ASD, autism and stuff. But I remember, like, here in Brazil, when you're a kid, usually call the teacher your aunt. I don't know why, but I remember the teacher coming to me. Oh, come with your aunt, and you're not my aunt. I won't go with you. You know.
That's
And
wild. Yeah,
oh
that's
yeah. I
yeah.
would question stuff as a kid, and you know, in the 80s and 90s, like today, kids have a lot of liberty. We treat them as actual people that they are. But like when we were kids, I think in the 80s and 90s, kids are just like parents' property or something. So you can't question the authority. So people would say, "Oh, this kid is weird. Why he's not obeying or why he's questioning this stuff?" You know. So yeah,
Yeah. I
I
ran into that a
understand
lot
that.
too, where it was,
Yeah.
yeah, why aren't you following the
Yeah.
rules? And I was like, I'll follow any rule that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess that maybe it informed my political leanings later in life, but it's one of those things where it was just like I was like, I will absolutely follow any rule that is for the common good that helps, the functional society we've built in this classroom. But if I don't see the purpose in it, if it doesn't serve me or the people around me, and it's just an arbitrary rule, I am not following it, and I'm not going to. So,
Yeah.
so yeah. Maybe I have an
That's yeah.
anti-authoritarian streak, but yeah.
That's really like my kids, you know. He was going to ASD, and everything we tell him to do, we have to tell him why, or he will start questioning, and but it's really, I don't know. I think it's healthier than when I was a kid. No, you have to do it because I'm telling you to do. I'm your parents, and shut up. You're a
Yeah.
kid, you know, and this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And there were teachers that said we were explaining too much to him, that we didn't have to explain. We just have to order him, and it always that's worse results. So I think that's very good, and I think kids are having a little bit more freedom to be like this today. Like
Yeah.
as
No,
like
I
before,
agree.
weird before when we were a kid, being weird was bad, and now it's kind of more, yeah, we are weird, we can do whatever we want, and we can, kids go wearing all these outrageous outfits to some schools. And if like in my childhood, if I would go like my kid went to his school dressed as Rapunzel, you know. And if I would go as Rapunzel when I was a kid, I would get beat up, you know. And now it's just, oh, it's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I definitely feel like a lot of ideas have kind of shifted, globally about
Yeah.
individualism, and I would kind of like to see, how that is faring with, because I feel like Americans are they're obsessed with individuality. And I feel like, when I was growing up,
Yeah.
they really drove home that like civic idea of like civic, um, not piety necessarily, but like civic, like you were, if you were civic minded, that was something that was to be praised. And I feel like, I'm not going to be like old man yells at cloud or anything like that, but it's one of those things where it's like, I definitely feel like it's really great to have individual choice, and that could have served me a lot better, as long as we're kind of being like, okay, and then, your individuality is great, but also to make sure that you're not harming the
Yeah.
people around you with your choices. You're being respectful neighbor and being, good, because sometimes that hyper individualism, especially in America, where there isn't a lot of times that sense of what's the word I'm looking for here, that sense of we're all in this
The
together.
absolute value of individual rights, that's very valuable in
Yes.
America. And like
Yeah.
no matter how fucked up it gets for the collective, like my individual rights are paramount there. And for me, that's kind
Yeah.
of crazy, you know.
It's super, it's like a lot of people perceive that as superseding
Yeah.
your, responsibility to your fellow man, and in the sort of, non-gendered way. I guess maybe I should amend more, have more gender inclusive language, but yeah, the that's what they used to say is, your fellow man or whatever. But it's like, yeah, it's like everybody in society deserves to have a
Yeah.
baseline of, individual respect and individual sort of like, and like individual freedoms can't
Yeah.
supersede the greater good. But I do think that like we are really starting to see a larger swing towards viewing even
Yeah.
children as having inherent rights. As when I was a kid, it was like you're going to do what I say because that's what parents do. And so, but I mean, not to get into generational politics, but baby boomers,
Yeah.
definitely had raising Xers and millennials. I'm one of the eldest generation of millennials, and definitely when we were kids, they were definitely kind of a more iron fisted with their parenting style. So I think that future generations, Xers, millennials, and hopefully even Gen Z and
Yeah.
eventually Gen Alpha will have a better grasp on what better serves kids than that kind of iron fisted
Yeah.
because I said so. So
Well, we can hope for, right? I don't know.
yeah, fingers
Yeah.
crossed, fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, Hodag, asking a little bit about your work. Can you identify some sort of where inspiration for your work come from? It could be like for comics or any like illustration or artists that you get inspired, that you uh, use it as a model or inspired you to develop your style and the way you do your art?
Yeah, definitely. Growing up, I wanted to be a sequential artist. I wanted to draw comics really bad. And I'm a huge DC Comics fan, so I've got about, I'd say probably 2,500 comics, which I keep saying that I'm gonna, pare down and get rid of, and yet I'm still yet to go through them and do whatever. But I collected pretty heavily from about starting in about 2006 until about 2013. But I obviously still have a lot of love for comic books. So my art heroes are people like Alex Ross, Kevin McGuire, the who did like the Justice League International, um, uh, Mike Mignola, Tim Sale, all of those really super great. Ramona Fredone, her work on Aquaman, and just like I don't know, I just really liked a lot of those, heroes. I got to meet one of my heroes, Martin Odell, in 2003, who created the original Green Lantern. Back in the 1930s, late 1930s, early 1940s, and that was really cool to get to meet him. And yeah, so I really have a lot of like my sort of like illustration heroes, Jack Kirby, and then even Glenn Orbeck. I'm trying to think of what else, and then a lot of like sort of American artists like Thomas Hart Benton, NC, and Andrew Wyeth. Both
Mm.
are pretty. Hopper, of course, is like a very big one, especially with kind of the way that he had a lot of liminal space in his work, which I know liminal gets used a lot. It's probably too much recently, but like just the way that he kind of his compositions. If I could figure out a way to kind of meld Hopper's like the way his layouts and the way that he uses space, and then the sort of like high composition of Mike Mignola, I would be the world's best artist. I feel like. So I
Yeah.
should probably work on that. But a lot of the time, I just kind of like again unzip and then kind of like just have like the art pour out of me. So maybe I'll try to focus someday and shoot that through a prism or something. But yeah, I don't know. I just I couldn't tell you how many different artists have kind of influenced my
Yeah.
style, because it's one of those things where it's like there was a
Yeah.
great
But
Aquaman run shortly
yeah.
after the New 52 started, by Ivan Reyes, Prado, and I think it was Joe Reyes. I can't remember exactly if it was Joe Prado, and then there was the other Reyes brother. But anyways, the way that they drew Aquaman and underwater stuff really was like, oh, this is incredible, and so yeah. So I'm sorry, you're gonna ask me a question.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot, but I have this question in my head. Like you, as you mentioned, like like painters like Andrew Wyeth and Malper, and I was wondering, you do like black and white artwork, and it's fantastic.
Uh-huh.
But have you ever wanted to do paintings? Because I mostly do black and white too, but I always wanted to like paint oil or something like this.
I mess around with watercolors every once in a while, but I love color theory. I love, the looking at how people do different colorations of things. And, sometimes I'll colorize my own work a lot with, just very rudimentary tools and stuff like that on my smartphone. But yeah, I don't really have a head for what looks good art, like, having those really those instincts, I guess, to color in my own work. And every time I see someone who's colored in my own work, I'm Magna Tolden, who was really kind enough to colorize my drawing for the cover of Beyond the Hypertrench role playing game that I did, and it just looked beautiful, and like my art colorized always looks so good, but it never looks good when I do it. So, eventually I probably need to try to figure out a colorist to work with. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not, my head doesn't, I love looking at colorful paintings or, things with, I especially love muted, subtle colors. Again, like,
yeah,
in a sort of like, Hopper didn't really work in a lot of like vibrant stuff, but like, not that his stuff would had bold colors, but they weren't necessarily vibrant. Like if you think of things like Nighthawks, but the which is the most famous one. But the like even when he did a lot of like his more like stuff with the like I said the more liminal spaces and things like that, they were always more soft, not even pastel, but just like just softer colors, and I think that would be interesting to play around with, but
yeah.
I'm just not good at it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I feel the same way. Like I want to do more, I don't know, painting courses. I used to paint a lot of watercolors during college, uh, but then I stopped it, and now I'm trying to figure it out again because I want to try some stuff with color, but I don't know. Yeah, I have the same feeling, and I see some other artists that colored my line work, and it's always I feel like so much better than what I did. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. And also too, I really do like black and white artwork. Like, a lot of times I feel like there's a lot of art that people feel the need to color in, and it's like,
oh yeah,
just almost it's almost like don't bother, especially if it's in the interior of a book. Like, you
yeah,
don't have to, like, I just wish more people understood that, like, you get more bang for your buck if you hire a black and white artist. We're able to work much faster. We're able to give you, and it's like people can pour more of their imagination into those things if you flip through older books, like everything from OD&D and Greg Bell's artwork, in that all the way up through like Shadowrun and even stuff that we did. Like I'm a huge fan of Justine Mara Anderson, and she did some wonderful work in the Hero Builders Guide. That was like one of the 3E splat books that I got in my first,
yeah,
2 months of playing role playing games. And her art in there is just so evocative, because it's like the Hero Builders book is this book that has like all of the different permutations in third edition of like, so it's like elf wizard, elf sorcerer, elf barbarian, elf, like it goes through, and like each section, I think it's divided up by like heritage or race, but it goes through and it's like each one. And so like, it's like stuff that I would never consider normally playing, but it's like this beautiful artwork of the dwarven wizard, and it's like I want to play a dwarven wizard now. And I think that like I think part of that was I was able to look at her art and kind of like have that moment of like, it was just a simple black and white drawing, or not simple, but it was like, sparsely detailed. It wasn't like, these like the very painterly illustrations like in fifth
yeah,
edition. And it's like I was able to like kind of pour part of my soul into that drawing, just looking at it. And then I was like, I'm going to play a dwarven wizard. I'm going to play an elf barbarian. I'm going to play against type, because there's these beautiful art pieces in there that really conveyed the possibility of those characters. And that was like a huge moment for me. And my thick lines, because I have two styles, I do thin line and then I do thick line. And I like my thick line style. A lot of people gravitate more towards my thin line style that has a lot more like cross hatching and, more of an etched look to it. Or like, not etched, but, kind of like my thick line style is more like woodcut ish, like wouldn't look out of place, if I was trying to like simulate a woodcut or something like that. And a lot of my artwork is a little bit more squiggly and it has thicker lines, and I like that a lot more. And also too, it goes a lot quicker. But like my thin line stuff is like, yeah, so but like the way that she did that book is kind of like, it's definitely apparent my influence in my thick line style, because the way that she did that was just gorgeous. Is just, if you get a chance, I highly
Yeah.
recommend picking that book up. Yeah, I think it's only like 10 USD or something like that online. So
Yeah, I'll look for that. And I
yeah.
don't know, I feel like black and white art, it's something that values drawing a lot, like composition and drawing and the details you make. And sometimes painting, especially now with this influence of concept art paint, it's more about areas and stains and colors and composition of these areas of color, and the drawing isn't so much in there, like the details, like the stuff you make, right?
Yeah,
And it,
yeah,
and I don't know, I think that's especially in RPG, like imagination stuff, you can see a lot of stories, hidden stuff in the details. Like I love the artwork of these artists that make these scenes, and there's stories hidden in the image, like this a rat grabbing a bone like in the background, or another
yeah.
character like stealing this gem on the wall on the other side, and while the main scene is happening in the foreground. And I think that's a lot harder to see in like those well-made color arts for like big game books like D&D or Free
Hmm.
League and stuff, because uh, they do a lot of the impact of the main figure and the colors and this, and they don't go too deep into the drawing part of it. I don't know
Hmm.
if you see that too or not.
No, definitely. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, you can look at something like that, like a lot of the more recent Magic the Gathering cards. I don't play, but like I follow a lot of like I just like art. Like I just like fantasy art, sci-fi art, like
Yeah.
so I follow a lot of I've had to unfollow a lot recently because of people not monitoring their spaces correctly. Because of the influx of AI art, which if we get
Oh
me
yeah.
started on that, that'll be a whole
Yeah.
I'll go on Magnus Robot Fighter. Somebody called Valiant Comics. We're bringing it back. But like, because I'm ready here to karate chop robots in half. But like,
Yeah.
I can't stand the scraper stuff. I can't stand any of that. And it's just kind of like, but I follow a lot of like retro futurist stuff, especially like the sort of cassette punk 80s, where it's like even that stuff is like it's high color, it's vibrant, neon, and a lot of the different sort of like compositional images that they would have when we were growing up, like Trapper Keeper style images, even like Lisa Frank stuff with a high contrast, high not high volume. I guess it would be high volume, but like the neons cranked up to 11 on a lot of those issues. Pardon me. On a lot of those issue or illustrations and things like that. But I like that kind of like stuff. But I feel like a lot of the fantasy art that we've seen recently has really gone down this path of having, like you said, like that kind of like, well, here's a portion of it is this color palette, and then it goes into this color palette, and then you'll have like a central like focus figure, right? And then you'll have like, and the stuff in the background just gets so muddy, it just gets so you gloss over it, even if there is detail back there, you just kind of like gloss over it because of the way that the things are laid out. And they don't have a lot of contrast usually in those
Yeah.
things, like even like the covers of the fifth edition books, it's like it's not as evocative, and which I mean, I nothing against the fifth edition system. I play that system semi regularly. I don't get a lot of chances to play. I'm usually too busy drawing, but like and when I do, I try to like help other people play test their games or whatever. But like, it's like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that like my personal tastes really go backwards towards that traditional art because I my first year of role playing, I got the third edition books. The first time I ever played D&D, it was a second edition Kit Bash 2E skills and powers thing that my buddy was running, and that actually was at a Habitat for Humanity thing in Sheboygan. We were raising money for Habitat for Humanity, so we built these like cardboard castles, and then we like spent the night in them, and then that was the first time I ever played D&D. Was like in these like cardboard castles in a park in Sheboygan. And anyways, but so I loved it. The next week, all of us bought the player's handbook, and I don't think the Dungeon Master's Guide was out yet, but the Monster Manual was out pretty quickly after that. So we started playing third edition, and then that summer, I was at a flea market and I found one of the old Holmes blue boxes for something like, and it's just absolutely wild price. I think I paid $25 for it at the time. And so I got that. And when I had to rebuy that as an adult, it cost me a lot more than that, about 3 times as much. And I got a steal because it's about half of what it normally goes for. So, but anyways, so that's the reason I always describe my art style as Y2K meets BX, because I really was influenced by a lot of those third edition illustrations in the third edition player's handbook, the third edition monster manual, and those things, having a little bit more of a almost Xena warrior princess vibe to them. And then are influenced by sort of 90s TV fantasy largely in some of those illustrations. And then a lot of that really high contrast older style art that was in like the Holmes blue box, and then later on when I got like the AD&D manuals and all that stuff, where it was kind of like I like that sort of like more rougher look, where it's like, is this perfect? No, but is this evocative of a fantasy adventure? Absolutely, and the art is weird in there. It's you go back and you look at those old drawings and they are bizarre, and they're very funky, and it's like, my work doesn't seek to necessarily replicate that, but it definitely seeks to pay homage to it, I guess. And that's kind of like, but yeah, my art is, like I always say, Y2K meets BX. So it's kind of look like it's an older style thing, but I'm going to draw pouches, and it's going to be a little bit more detailed, and maybe I'll put a little bit more thought into, and also too, my references, my frame of reference, is going to be much different than someone had in 1970, when I'm dealing with, I have, now at this point in time, 30 or 40 more years of media that's influenced me versus those people that were doing it back in the 70s, So I don't know. Yeah.
I think it makes sort of sense, and I think this definition of Y2K meet BX, it's kind of the essence of the OSR, or at least the NSR kind of movement, to bringing like new ways of doing old stuff, and that's kind of what you're saying, like you do with your art, like you combine the weird of the old art and these aesthetics with some influence of new artists and things you learn nowadays, which is basically exactly what I try to do with my games. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I love the old D&D books. Not only the mechanics, which are simpler and more intuitive to me, but I mean, Arrow Otto's art and all these people that use it to illustrate this other view of fantasy, because today you see like the more famous fantasy RPGs, they all seem kind of homogeneous in the way they see magic or creatures or monsters, and that may be good for people trying to learn these tropes. But I mean, I think for imagination and creativity, having these different views, like especially you see like DCC, every artist seems to be illustrating a different universe. But you see D&D or like any other very famous RPG, they have very different artists there, but somehow they all seem to making the same thing, the same world, like the same aesthetic, and that can be good. A lot of people find that very good because all the book has the same feel, and DCC, like every page it can be something different. But and it's for the GM that's gonna run that. I think that's really very good to see the possibilities of the game, like the art kind of stitching you to that you can see the game in very different ways. You can have different settings and different kind of adventures, different aesthetic for the game you play, you know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And, for my money, two of the best artists I think going on right now are Evie, of course, Evie Moreau, who you've had on previously, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then Perplexing Ruins.
Oh
Every time I talk to, I call him Perp, and I always hope that I'm not being weird, but I just love his stuff so much.
yeah.
It's so good, and
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 it's
of course,
getting better and better over time. Like I remember when he started, it was already cool, but now it's like,
yeah.
oh my god, you know.
I feel I hope it's mutual, but I feel a deep kinship with Perp because well, I think we kind of materialized about the same time, kind of appeared from the ether. And then of course, Evie stuff is unmatched. Just the way that she does things is just her art is so gorgeous, and like it's not even the stuff that I'd usually be into. Not that I'm like, I'm a very traditional guy when it comes to what I like in a role playing game, which is like, I'm not, I won't not play science fiction or whatever. But like, if I'm sitting down to play a role playing game, my favorite role playing game is something that is very bog standard fantasy. I love give me the traditional race class combos. I'm usually willing to kind of work with people, but if I'm GMing something, it's going to be, you're going to be a human, elf, dwarf, halfling, high orc, or some permutation of such. If you're, the fighter wizard, or fighter magic user, thief, cleric, and then, the permutations of such, we can kind of haggle about what's going to be in the universe. But when people are making art now, it's like even with Edie's art, she just makes beautiful stuff that games that like I would never even think to play, and it makes me want to play those games. And I'm like, it's just like she's really great. I'm trying to think of Mac Tag, who is another artist, and they are really great, and they're kind of like very close to my style. So a couple of times, we've both remarked on scrolling through our various feeds and being like, wait, I didn't draw that, and then we'll look, it's the other person. So it's like, it's kind of one of those things. And if I'm overbooked, I always send all of the people over to Matt Tag, because I'm like, I don't have to. Listen, I would love to illustrate your thing. I don't have time. I'm overbooked. Here's a artist that is essentially going to give you a very similar outcome to something that I would draw. So, I was actually able to be on their podcast. I think it was called Art of Adventure. I don't know if it's still going, but it was very good and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I was had a very interesting conversation with them. So it's, but I mean, we've just got a ton of great people. What is it? Lucas K. Lucas, is it Polo? Man, he does a lot of like the really high contrast neon stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's
I'm drawing a blank here.
People, yeah.
Lucas K. I don't know how to say his last name, but yeah.
It's from Poland, like Lucas Kowalski or Lucas. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, it's. I'm looking up on my phone, but we're recording, so.
Yeah. There are like two Lucas from Poland that I worked with. That I love their art. One is Lucas Kowalski that illustrated the Cosmosaurus for me and did a bunch of Primal Quest art. And that's Lucas Privinsky. He did a cover for me for a game that I haven't written yet.
Lucas P. also great. Yeah. So it's yeah. So it's fun. I think it's kind of like funny that but I mean I think they're just we're living in this like really kind of great age of illustrators, and you've got people that are doing basically every type of art that you could imagine.
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, I don't know. I'm just I'm just happy to be here. I'm glad that I found an audience for my art. And then also too, I spend a lot of time. I try to hype up other artists that I like too, because it's like, I mean, it's a big community, and I just want I'm not in competition with anybody. I know some
Yeah.
people kind of get in that mode where they're like, oh well, yeah, so you like their art better than they like my art, and it's like, no. That's
Yeah.
not the point of art. The point of art is that you like you don't
Yeah.
watch one TV show, you don't read one
Yeah.
book. I mean, I
Yeah. You
guess some
can't
people do. Yeah, but
imagine it
yeah,
was like
it's
this. It would be terrible.
yeah,
Like we just have
it
one
would be
game because
terrible.
it's the best game, so we just have one. That would be
Right. Yeah.
terrible.
I love looking at other art so I can steal tricks. And
Yeah.
that's my stance, is that I'm gonna if you do something cool and I like it, I'm gonna file it away, and then when I go into my creative mode, I'm just gonna go ahead and hopefully maybe that'll influence it,
Yeah.
and maybe it'll
Yeah.
be something even half as cool as what other people are doing. So
Yeah. One the books I live by is called Still Like an Artist, so I totally understand. Like
yeah.
everything I see, like all my games that I make, I usually influence for the games I'm reading or playing now. So
uh,
I'm always like taking small bits for here and there. Like I can honestly see like the trajectory of my game and how they evolve it and everything, and then now always adding stuff from other games and mixing and making this Frankenstein. That's my own thing. And then it seems I love this phrase that says like originality is undetectable plagiarism.
yeah, but I mean, like that's the key, right? That's like where
Yeah,
human beings are constantly, and it's like that's, I think, the biggest nail in the coffin of the AI stuff, is that it's like, yeah, you can regurgitate any amount of style. You can say, oh,
yeah,
draw me this, draw me that, whatever. But like if it's not coming from inside of a human person,
yeah.
it's not going to be worth a hill of beans.
Yeah, intentionality is
Yeah,
everything. I mean, art. I would say, oh,
absolutely.
but art is copied from each other, so AI is copying. It's not fucking about that. It is
No,
because
it's not the same.
it's like copyright,
Not
but
the
it's
same at
not.
all.
Yeah, it's about intentionality. Like a favorite example that I like to say, like I mean, AI art is like it's gonna be beautiful, well made, like you can see all these details, but it's like a hollow egg. It's gonna be beautiful
Yeah.
outside, but it's shallow, it's empty. Like you see, it's not telling a story. Do you remember as I said, oh, this illustration, you have a story, you have this mouse doing something on the background, and this other character doing something other thing. And when the illustrator make those art, they make hundreds of choices, hundreds of intentional choices to show this or that, or to try to hide a message there. I don't know. There's that painting of the Last Supper from Jesus. I'm not Catholic. I'm even an atheist, but that image, it's so illustrative because you have this figure in the middle and all these 12 apostles. Everyone is doing something. One is whispering to another one is playing with his finger or doing something, and you see all this narrative. But when you see AI art, there's nothing. There's only, oh, this look cool, but there is no narrative. There
Yeah.
is no intentionality. There is no soul in there, and most of all, there is no humanity. And
Yeah.
when we're gonna start like putting these everywhere, we are severing the connections that we have with artists, that we see humanity through art, and we are gonna start severing this, and
Mm.
we are ever more isolated. And like as you said, like Americans are like crazy bonkers about individuality, and we are isolating ever more. And since for whatever reason, America is like the standard for the world, like I mean, we
Yeah.
are colonizing like the culture that comes from there, and like start sipping into ours. I feel we're losing our humanity step by step. And AR, although it may seem catastrophic in Apocalypto, I'm saying this, but I think it's another step towards isolating ourselves and losing our humanity, and just, I don't know,
Yeah, no, I
something
totally
dark's
agree.
coming.
It's
Yeah.
it's almost like almost like a zombie art, where it's
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. And
whatever
it's eating
yeah,
our
it's
brains. Yes.
it moves, it vocalizes, but is it alive? Does it have a soul? I don't think so. And and it's literally coming for us. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I get real worked up about it. I have to
Yeah,
really keep myself in check because I get like a little bit
yeah,
a
yeah. I
a
understand.
little
Yeah,
bit zealous about being like it's like it doesn't matter what it produces. The fact that it produces anything is irrelevant. The fact that you're using it without I don't know.
yes. You're
Every
severing
but
you're severing your own humanity. You're choosing
right, yeah.
to
And
sever
it's like
your. I don't know. It's hard to understand for
it's
people that don't do art because they don't understand all these intentions, all this humanity that you pour on your work. But I don't know. You should try to listen to artists. It's not just about copying or like cutting work. It's
mhm.
about humanity, you know.
Yeah, I know I totally agree with you. And it's like there's in order for something to actually be art, there's no quantifiable of what is art versus what isn't. But I think that like the only thing that art really is a risk. You are intentionally taking a risk when you
Yeah,
make something that is artistic. When you make any
it's
piece of
yeah,
art,
it's human
you're giving part of
vulnerability. I
your
think.
soul to the world. Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
totally, totally. And it's like,
yeah,
it's like something that has no creative risk is not art.
yeah, yeah,
And and that's just how I feel. But yeah,
yeah,
I don't know. We can get off that because otherwise
yeah,
we'll
yeah,
be here
yeah.
for 3 hours, and
Of course.
I'll be
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I'll
yeah.
have to go out and take it on my
Yeah,
dehumidifier I got in my house. Ooh, you lousy robots. But
yeah.
yeah,
Well, let's talk something more calm and more unifying.
yes, let's get zen. Let's get
You,
zen.
you said you're an expatriate, so let's talk about that.
No, well, no, I moved away from my homeland, so but it's been a back and forth thing. I've lived a bunch of different places, and so it's kind of one of those things where it's all in the Midwest, but it's I used to live in the Great Lakes area, and now I live in the Great Plains, so it's kind of that's a different experience, but I've lived here longer than I haven't lived here, but culturally, all of my sort of like signifiers. I still root for all the Wisconsin sports teams. I'm not huge into sports, but I got a couple of Packers shirts, and I just got back into baseball recently. So, which I always enjoyed going to games, but I never really followed them. And then they instituted the pitch clock this year in the major league. And listen, I always have been interested in baseball nominally, but when they started making the games 2 hours instead of 7 hours, I was like, let's reevaluate this. Also, I'm going to turn 40 soon, so I held off as long as I could. I'm like, I guess I'm interested in baseball now. But the yeah, so but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've lived at a bunch of different places, and kind of had a bunch of different interesting experiences and stuff. But culturally, Wisconsin will always be my home, and I'll always have such fond memories of living in Sheboygan, and that'll always be my sort of hometown, I guess. It was the first place I ever played D&D. It was the first place I ever had a real group of friends that was very strong, and I still talk to them all the time. And that's I think the most important thing is like maybe it's not where I was born. Where I was born was kind of irrelevant. But I was born in the Wisconsin part of Chicagoland, so I was born in the Racine Kenosha area, um,
Mm.
and stuff, and had family up there for a long time. But most of my family's moved out of that area. I've still got a few people that live up there, but I only lived there for a little while, and then we moved around, and I've lived in a bunch of different places in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
regardless of living outside the state too. So, but yeah, Wisconsin is I will always consider it to be my home, even if I don't necessarily live there. But I definitely do view myself as an expatriate.
Uh, I thought about saying like expatriate as like you're not patriotic anymore for like Americans stuff like this.
Well, yeah, I'm also that. No, I mean,
Okay.
it's like one of those. I don't think that you can look at American history and be like, I am proud of this. Although I do,
America. Yeah, I know.
I do love my region. I love living in the Midwest. I
Yeah.
love the fine people of the Midwest, and I wouldn't fly. I probably wouldn't fly an American flag, but I definitely would fly a Wisconsin flag. And so I definitely, I even not that there's not problems everywhere, and
Yeah.
poor history everywhere. But yeah, I'm not growing up, I was a very patriotic person. And I mean, it's when you're a kid, it's hard not to believe in
Yeah.
the kind of propaganda and the kind of idea of like and still part of me, I guess, I still believe in the kind of like the highest minded ideals of like what I was told America was,
Yeah.
the promise, I guess, of a world where everyone has equity and
A
equality and
chance.
things
Yeah.
of that nature. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, but like you look at the kind of like the propaganda behind it, you're like, yeah, I can't get behind that. But I do love the people where I live. I do love the people in places I come from. But as you get older, you kind of start seeing yourself, and it's like there's literally no difference between culturally there is, but like, if you talk to somebody from, Europe or Asia or Africa or any other continent, you're going to have, what do they say?
Yeah.
There's always more variations within a group than there is without a group, right? Because all human beings have, basic needs, wants, desires, and whatever. And
Yeah.
so, the older I get, the more I'm just kind of like, I'm, a citizen from Earth, but, it's just kind of like one of those things where you just got to kind of like really take into account, a lot of the bad stuff. And yeah, I growing up, I bought into it, and then you get a little bit older, and you take a few American history courses, and you realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff here that we
Yeah.
were not told in school, so, but yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Uh, Hodag, asking a little bit about your work again. What would you say is the weirdest part of your work, or your favorite weird part of the stuff that you do?
I would, I guess, like, just people always say that I have very expressive faces, which I guess like maybe comes from like, me wanting to draw comics when I was younger. But I always try to like, I try to add a little detail, little flares, to the people
Yeah.
that I draw, because and I like figure drawing a lot. I have if you look at my work, I have very standard backgrounds, a little bit of cross hatching here, some I try to add little details in the background for fun, but like for the most part, it's like if I draw a dungeon wall, I figured out a long time ago that you can do kind of like the Mike Mignola consummate V's and squiggles, and then add a little bit of texture next to them instead of having
Hmm.
to draw each individual brick, because that gets really, 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 really obnoxious as an artist to have to draw each individual stone in a dungeon. But if you look at my like, so I really tried to mix it up and do kind of like more fighting fantasy style stuff when I did like some work with You Meet in a Tavern, You Die in a Dungeon, which is like some of my best work that I've ever done, probably. Very high contrast. I don't know where I was pulling from when I was drawing some of that stuff, but like it was very, I just kind of immersed myself in a lot of different techniques that I hadn't used before, because I wanted to look visually more different. But
Yes.
I do tend to have little tips and tricks, and also too, if something doesn't work out, the nice thing is that as a traditional artist that still uses pen and ink, I don't spend a lot of my time erasing stuff. I'll just go in with a Sharpie and just correct it the old-fashioned way with, well, now it's a dark corridor because I messed up on the bricks. So that kind of stuff, where it's just you learn how to do stuff differently. But yeah, I like to add a lot of personality to, even if it's like a funky dragon. I did a lot of the work that I did in fantastic medieval campaigns for Marsha B from Traverse Fantasy. Uh, her OD&D fantastic medieval campaigns. I was really trying
Yeah.
to capture that sort of like Greg Bell 1973 style art, and
Yeah.
that was really fun. But it was also too, was like I was really going out of my way to kind of make it look like the oldest possible fantasy art from the original game.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I'm actually interviewing Marcia B later today.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She's so
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I adore her. She was
Wow.
really kind enough to do the layout for both Hodag the 2013 original version, and the when I did that 2 years ago, and then she also did just a incredible job on Beneath the Dungeon Floor, which is like my solo luncheon crawl, which you can play in about an hour and go through and do like a little dungeon crawl on your lunch break at work. Game that I
Nice.
did. And she laid it out like long ways. Like normally you have like you fold your paper in half because it's like landscape, but then like she did it where it's folded in half portrait. So it's kind of this like long thin game. But it's like
Hmm.
every time I like have it setting out or something, or someone sees it printed off and they're like, "What is that?" You know, because it's
Yeah.
longer. It's it's a weird shaped game, but absolutely, she's wonderful. I
Yeah.
can't speak highly enough of Marcia.
Yeah. She's very right. And like her blog is like a well of knowledge, I think. It's great.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
literally. I every time I talk to her, I never feel more like the jock than when I'm talking to Marcia, because she's definitely like the smartest kid at the school, right? If we were all going to school together, she would
Yeah.
be head and shoulders above
Yeah.
me, who's drawing two guys in chainmail punching each other, But yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Hodag, I always like to ask this too about role-playing games and how do we see them. So, do you see role-playing games as a weird thing? And if you do, what would be your favorite weird thing about them?
No, I don't, man, I don't think that they're weird. I think that they were like, obviously there was like a stigmatized, but like when you're a kid, you go outside and you play Batman or G.I. Joe, or, I mean, I know I did when I was a kid. I played I grew up religious, so I played like Pilgrim's Progress, was like a favorite of mine, where I would be the main character Christian, and I would be going and having the trials and tribulations and whatever. Which it was pretty funny because I was reading Little Women when I was a kid, and they were also playing Pilgrim's Progress, and there I was like, wow, kids really don't change century to century much, do they? But like I'd go out and I'd play Narnia or Star Wars or Lion King or any of that stuff, that was real popular when I was a kid. But the kids, they go outside, you're playing outside, you're pretending to be these characters, you're role playing. It's not with dice or anything, but you're inhabiting a character, you're making up rules, you're doing all this other stuff, with your friends, and because it's just pure chaos if one kid in your neighborhood,
Yeah.
which there's always one that is, no, you didn't shoot me, I dodged the bullet, I've got a force field, blah blah blah. It's like, okay, well, then it becomes this thing. So that's really what attracted me to role playing, was like, it's like as a kid I loved playing outside and pretending to, do basically, unsanctioned LARPs, or either by myself or with, kids that I knew or whatever. And so I think it's a very natural thing to want to embody a different character, or to think of yourself in a different way. And so I think that role playing games are an extension of that. And especially if you're like a world builder person like I am, where I derive, a lot of my joy in role playing from world building, from making new worlds, from, figuring out factions and monster types, and setting up play sets basically for people to kind of like insert their character action figures into the scene, and building out stuff like that. And I like the improvisation of it. So I mean, it is a weird thing to do, I guess, but like, not, it is a weird thing for adults to do, but as a kid, you're born with that. You have that natural ability to kind of be able to like, inhabit a different character. Even if it's a character that's pre-existing, you're still adding your spin onto it, and be like, okay, well, I'm
Yeah.
Batman, but I've got the guy, also wearing the suit of the Black Power Ranger or whatever, so it's like, you have a lot of that creativity and stuff. And then when you get older, like, people's tastes may more run more towards, either simulation or towards, creating something that has a real, factual basis, or like has an internal logic as an adult. But that impulse is still there, I think.
Yeah. I think so. It's almost like play pretend for adults, and a little more structure, because I think when we were kids, we were a lot more open to this kind of play. And
Right.
I think maybe having RPGs is a way to trick adults into thinking, oh, this is a structured thing. You can play it, you know. or something like this.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
Maybe.
definitely agree. Definitely agree.
Yeah. And what would be like the weirdest game you played, or a recent experience that you played and got so weird that it stuck in your mind or something?
um, uh, I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
I don't know.
tough
That's hard.
questions.
Again, like I get to play like 2 or 3 times a year. So because I'm like, busy. I
Yeah.
Yeah, not to brag, but I stay busy, man. And if you follow my feeds, you know that I crank out a lot of work. So
Well,
I guess,
it can be a game you read. It can be something you
oh,
read that
sure.
really caught your mind or
Oh,
something.
I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I created a very weird game when I 2001, or I'm sorry, 2021. Rather, I did 52 games that year, and
Wow.
yeah, so that was like my goal, right? Was to do 52 games. Because I started off with Escape the Hypertrench and then immediately got a bunch of praise for it. And that's the easiest way to get me to do anything. Is excited about something is to
Yeah.
praise me. And so I'm like, okay, great. So I've got all of this. So I started doing that. And there were some underrated gems in there. A lot of like very hastily put together sort of one-page stuff. But one that I did was called Just Plain Spooky, and it was a horror western. And I think, if I remember correctly, about 4 or 5 people downloaded it, maybe less. But it was like one of the weirdest games that I've ever made. So I guess maybe that would be it. But yeah, like I don't necessarily get to play a lot of games, and when I do play games, I really gravitate towards that bog standard stuff. So it's kind of like that's kind of the way that I do things. But yeah, I guess I think it's still up on itch. Go check out Just Plain Spooky. I think I did that for October
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about it and
If
how
I
weird it
recall,
is?
it's really bizarre. It was so I was I was trying to remember the name of there's this movie called The Wind, which is a horror western, and then I also had seen a movie called Grim Prairie Tales, and so it's sort of this weird. Grim Prairie Tales is a little bit funnier. It's not comedy necessarily, but it's definitely less tonality. It's a lighter film than The Wind was, but both were sort of like horror westerns.
Okay.
And I couldn't remember the name of it, and I was talking to somebody, and I like sometimes I'll just pull names out of the ether and to try to describe what I'm talking about, and I just said Just Plain Spooky, which plains like the Great Plains. And so anyway, so that was the thing. But if I remember correctly, it's you are a group of like cowboys or townsfolk that is out in the Great Plains or something like that, and like mysterious things keep happening, and I think that it could, and I think it's more of a story game if I remember correctly, or like you have to. But again, it was a game that I made at this point in time over 2 years ago, and I've made a lot of different games and
Yeah, yeah,
illustrated a lot
yeah,
of stuff in between now and then.
yeah.
So yeah, but
Totally
anyways,
understand. Yeah.
I'll have to go look at it again because I just remember
Yeah.
like being like, oh, this is very clever, and I think like, but the download, I think it's my least downloaded game ever, which is really funny. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't mind. I made it.
Yeah.
It was enough for me to make it, and it's
Yeah.
got some good art in it. It's got like a cowboy skeleton in it, so you should definitely go just for that. Go check it out on itch. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to make it bold here on my notes for the episode and try to put it on the show notes. I'm trying to be a little bit more disciplined for this, but it's
Sure,
hard.
sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you're talking to the chaotic, person over here. So
Yeah, and trying to do too much stuff at the same time. So yeah,
yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
how I have to put this out and don't have time to like go through everything and pull out the links. Yeah, maybe I should hire assistants or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, weirdos. This is Diogo Nogueira, and I'm back with a word from our sponsors. Me. I just released a new game called Cosmosaurus, in which you play a dinosaur space ranger who protects the galaxy from evil threats such as slime bankers, undead pirates, and cosmosaurs from a void dimension. It's a game with a runes-light system inspired by Forged in the Dark and Lasers and Feelings. It comes with a bunch of tables for you to generate content for it. If you know my games, they're really easy to play and they have tools to help you improvise and play with low prep. It's an ideal game for one-shots, short campaigns, and introducing new people to the hobby, and it's a really perfect family game. I play with my kids all the time. It's a game inspired by Saturday morning cartoons. It's really well illustrated by Lucas Kowalski from Poland, and with a great layout by Guilherme Gontijo. It's a really fun game. You should check it out on Drive-Thru-RPG, itch.io, or exclusively in print on exaltedfurniture.com. I have many other games there, check them out. All the links are in the show notes, so click there. And let's get back to Weird with our chat. Yeah. So, Hodag, talking a little bit more about yourself now and going back to the weird things that you can share with us. How has your year been? Have you have a weird year? How has 2023 been treating you, my friend?
Oh, pretty good. My household and I moved into a house, so that was very cool. We'd been living in kind of an apartment duplex thing, so that was kind of like interesting. And so, like when you're, purchasing a house in the U.S., it's like a very complicated process. And it was just all this, kind of emotionally, the housing market here is very poor, and it's just very hard to, being millennials, they're like, oh, millennials will never own a house. So it's like one of those things where it's like that's true. The hurdles that you have to jump through are absolutely wild, and it was like such a laborious process, both emotionally, financially, just getting everything squared away, and then the physical act of moving out of a place where I had been for the last decade, and stuff. So that was like a very hard thing to do. But and I, there was a lot of delays on things that I was working on because it was like, okay, well, we've got, X amount of time to move and pack and do all this other stuff. And it was just kind of like, a very wild experience. So it felt like, we started that process in the first quarter of the year, and then it was right as the transition. I think it was, early in the sort of second quarter of the year there. It was kind of like just getting everything set up, and I still don't have everything unpacked. I actually was just unpacking stuff last night. I still don't have, I have a temporary art space, but like I've got like I don't have anything for my studio set up. I've still got my large art table and storage from the move. So it's just kind of like it's just been a wild year that way. But it's also been really, really rewarding too. It's great, and a lot of adult responsibilities, where you're kind of like when you're renting, you don't have to worry necessarily about. Now there's just like a whole nother group of, home ownership stuff that you've got to worry about. So it's kind of like, it's definitely been a very rewarding experience, but it really, really ate into my ability to produce as much as I would like. So hopefully next year, I'm really looking to 2024 being a year where I can really have everything set up, hopefully by New Year's, and then getting everything for 2024, like set up and ready to go. So I can just like absolutely next year, really do well and get a lot of stuff done. This year I produced a lot of stuff, but it was always under the gun. I had to be doing it, and
a lot of stuff going on, right?
Around me. So
sometimes I always feel like this, and I day job and kids and school and therapy, and I was just like running around everywhere, and it's really impressive how you managed to make so much, like going through moving and stuff. It's hard, And talking about other stuff, like have you ever had any kind of weird experiences relating to altered states of awareness or perception, be them with, I don't know, meditation, hypnosis, near-death experiences, or psychedelics? And if you did, how did that affect your life?
So yeah, I actually um I'll answer that question in a very roundabout way, but so stick with me. So I'm a square, right? I don't
Okay.
I stopped I drank a little bit in my early 20s, but I didn't by the time I was about 25, I pretty much had stopped. And then I stopped entirely. Just, I still cook with alcohol, but like I never had a problem or anything like that. No judgment for people who are in recovery or
Yeah.
are on sober life paths for different reasons. But I just it no longer appealed to me after a certain age. And so I still cook beer brats and whatever, but like it's like I don't drink alcohol. And I got contact high at a party once. That was about as close as I ever came to doing that kind of stuff. And so it's kind of like I'll use like a CBD
Yeah.
tincture or something to go to sleep. But like it's like it's one of those things where it's just kind of like
Yeah.
I don't normally do recreational drugs or mind expanding
Okay.
stuff or whatever. I'm interested in they talk about things like microdosing or mushroom
That's
stuff
how I
or whatever.
started.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but
Because
like
I have
I
anxiety. Yeah. So yeah, I tried
yeah,
that
yeah,
and it
I heard
helps.
it really helps, and yeah, but I personally haven't ever experienced things like that. But I will say this,
I
I've
didn't
had a lot
too
of
until the pandemic. I haven't tried anything into the pandemic, and then you know,
yeah, that's hey, there's much worse times to start mind
yeah,
expanding experiments
yeah.
than
It did help. I
during a
mean,
literal plague.
yeah,
Yeah.
it did
No,
help
I
because
yeah.
there there was a time in 2021 I anxiety was so bad I thought I was having like a heart attack.
Oh yeah, no, I
Yeah,
I totally understand
yeah,
that. Yeah, I was actually able to take advantage of a few public health programs that they had here where they had free like therapy. So you could get like weekly therapy for like
yeah,
I think it was like two or 3 months, and so you could do like so it was like 12 or 13 sessions. And it
yeah,
was really helpful. But
yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah. I tackled
I
all sides. I did therapy and this and that because I was really scared. But sorry, go on. Like
yeah, no,
you
yeah,
haven't
no, I
messed
totally get
with
that.
all of this, but I'm just saying, like, I never did too. Was only like after being an adult and stuff. But yeah, I
Yeah,
understand. Like, yeah, I don't like
yeah. I was
drinking too
I
much too. Drinking makes my stomach. Sometimes I drink just 1 or 2 beers because it's some beer I really like. Like I just don't
yeah,
go to a bar and drink any alcohol thing. I drink just the stuff I like because like stomach wise. When I was a kid, yeah, I'll drink anything just to get drunk. But now, no. Yeah,
yeah. I went through that phase regrettably. I waited until I was 18 and out of school, but then I like I decided that I was going to be Mr. Cool Guy, and had friends that drank a lot, and so I drank a lot, and then at a certain point, I was just
yeah,
like, yeah, I don't really like drinking. I don't really get as much of a kick out of this as other people in my friend group. And, you grow up a little bit, you move, you get different friends, and, you find other people, and you're kind of like, and also too, like, I've never really had a problem with peer pressure too much. As far as like that stuff goes, where it's like,
yeah,
if someone were to be like, oh, you're not going to drink, and be like, well, yeah, I'm not going to, if I say I'm not going to drink, like, that's just the end of it. Like, I
yeah,
won't brook any fools. I won't be, but yeah, no,
yeah,
I fell out of love with it pretty quickly. And a lot of, people, I guess, can develop problems or, have like different stuff, and, I have experienced in my family people that have had issues, and, I've been part
sure,
of the family support for AA and stuff like that, or gone through some of those programs and stuff to help support people in my life that were trying to get sober. But like it's just it was never an issue for me. But yeah, I never really did that, and then I never really did any of like the harder stuff either, where it was kind of like, and then I am interested in it, but I think that like I at this point in time in my life, I don't necessarily need it. So I guess like I'll just like wait until things develop a little bit further, and then there's maybe some kind of psilocybin pill or something that I can take, because I guess they've had great help. It's been a great help to many people with sort of
Well,
psychiatric or
yeah,
psychiatric therapeutics or something like that. So
no.
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, like I definitely have. I guess I'm probably gonna like jump down the line a little bit. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the show, so I think that I know where this line of questioning is going. But I definitely have had like a lot of paranormal experiences, and I definitely feel like at certain points in my life, maybe less so now, but when I was younger, I was much more in tune with the supernatural side of things. And I've had a lot of experiences and I've had a lot of different stuff. So a lot of weird things have happened to me in my life, things that were outright supernatural, things that, happen to many people that have supernatural experiences. I've seen, UFO. I've never seen, but I think, like, I want to believe that I've experienced a Bigfoot encounter, or was in the
Wow.
presence of a Bigfoot. Um, I I can't know for sure, but you grew up on a 1,000-acre farm and you're walking around at night, doing stuff, checking, hunting traps, and
Yeah.
looking for lost cattle, and sometimes just walking the perimeter fence at night to make sure that no one's poaching your cattle or anything like that. And it's like, but I will say this, that that experience was when I was much much younger, and that could have been a trick of the mind. But we were also near an area that had animal remains, where we would uh, have a respectful sort of graveyard for animals that passed away in our care, that were farm animals. And so maybe that's where that smell came from. But they always say that like there's like a really intense rotting smell sometimes with Bigfoot encounters, and I definitely saw something moving. I shined my flashlight, couldn't make heads or tails out of what I was seeing, but definitely had that experience of that sort of very rotten smell that sometimes accompanies a Bigfoot encounter. So,
Yeah. Did you see anything else? Did you find like did you look for tracks or like footprints or anything like this?
no, we were moving pretty quickly because we were trying
Okay.
to find. We were doing a cow was missing from head count.
Okay.
Uh,
Did you
so,
find it?
yes, yeah, we
Or
found it. We
did
found it.
Bigfoot took it? Oh.
No, I mean that would be really interesting if we,
Yeah.
it'd be like, we find like a half-eaten animal somewhere,
Yeah.
or something. But yeah,
Yeah.
thankfully, the younger cow
Yeah.
had just gotten
Yeah.
separated and was
Yeah.
kind of down in a small ravine, not a ravine.
Yeah.
It would have eventually got out by itself, but we found it.
Yeah,
And then
and everybody knows that Bigfoot is a vegetarian too, so no worries about that.
right.
Yeah, so,
Oh, sure. Yeah. Hopefully, fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
yeah.
So, but yeah, they definitely did see, a shape moving, whether or not that was, a trick of the light, but I mean, I've had a lot of like,
Yeah, I was gonna ask
I
about
don't
the
want to say,
UFO. Like, what did you see? Like you
UFO,
said, you saw
very,
one. Yeah.
very standard. A couple of the areas that I live are near Air Force bases, so it could have been, nighttime patrols. It could have been a stealth bomber test. It could have been
Okay.
anything. But I saw one of those V-shaped light formations that they always talk about, and it was too big to be something that I would. And I know that, like, the stealth bombers and everything like that, like sometimes they have those V-shaped patterns and things. But like, or just a military aircraft could be anything. But this was like slow moving, and it was lights flying in a V, but they were like flying too low, and they were like that sort of like V made of the red dots, you always see. And it was kind of like one of those things. There was a very low, intense humming noise, and then, but it was kind of a foggy night. It was a little bit misty, and I was outside of a sort of a large warehouse facility that I was
Right.
working at the time, and it was a very intense experience. And I didn't experience any sort of missing time or anything like that, but it was definitely like. And then as a kid, I saw some stuff. I saw like a fireball in the sky, but actually related to that, the farmhouse that I grew up in, I had a sort of floating spook light experience or a will o' the wisp experience, where there was a floating ball of light. I used to wake up very early because I've always kind of liked the nighttime. And so a lot of times when you're a kid, you have to obey your parents by when you have to go to bed, even if it's 5 o'clock in
Yeah.
at night, and you're like, you get done with supper and then they're like, okay, well, you've got to be in bed and asleep by 6 or whatever, because you've got farm chores, or you've got to go to school the next day or whatever. And so it's summertime and you're like, I'm never gonna fall asleep. It's light outside, but I would wake up, so I could control when I woke up, which was, because normally, I only sleep for a short amount of time anyways. Like, I guess maybe that's the reason I'm so prolific with my art stuff, is like, I try as I might. Sometimes I can get 8. For the most part, I only get about 6 hours of sleep. But like when I was a kid, I would wake up really early, and I got up, and there was so I like walked out into the to the sort of living room area that we had. We had one of those giant picture glass picture frame windows like they used to have in the older houses with the, like, I mean, this thing was probably like maybe 9 by 10. It was a very large front window. And
Nice.
so we're yeah, I mean, he had a pretty good view of like the gravel road that I lived on. And but anyways, the to make a long story short, I wake up and I'm gonna, turn the TV on and wait for the Blue Angels to fly, because this is the early 90s. Wait for the Blue Angels to fly over and the American anthem to play, so the broadcast day would start, because I'm that many years old. But the so I go out in the living room, and I see this light, and it's traveling. It's almost like, I'm almost like, is someone shining a one of those old style 9 volt, or not 9 volt, but the big battery flashlights that they used to have? Is someone like shining that in the window? But I notice it's not. There's no way that it would be doing this, because it's like the way that it's like it's up too high for that to be, going. So I see it going around the side of the house, and I'm almost dreading it coming in front of this large window. And so as I'm like, kind of like sitting there terrified of this this thing, this like it's about the size of, I wouldn't say like somewhere between a basketball and a softball, like for like, softball league pitching or something like that. But it's like, so it's like, I don't know, it's this like ball made of white light, and it just kind of slowly floats in front of the window, and I'm just kind of like, this is really wild. And then it almost like, as it's going, it picks up speed. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird, but someone could be outside. My grandfather lived on the property, so it could have been him, going and doing early chores or something like that at 5 o'clock in the morning. But all of a sudden, I see it race past the window again on the sort of other side of the house, and it shoots past the front picture window. And it does that about 4 or 5 times. So it keeps going faster and faster and faster. And then
Wow.
it just kind of like, it just stops. It just is, it disappears, so it doesn't make another lap. And I just like, that was like really freaky to me,
Yeah.
where it was just kind of like, what is going on with that? Because like normally with spook lights, and in places in the Midwest and Appalachia, like you can kind of see them off in the distance. You don't normally see a will o' the wisp activity like that, but it was just this weird floating ball of light. But I've always been
Wow.
kind of sensitive to stuff. I've had a lot of like, I've had experiences at like Gettysburg and other Civil War battlefields.
Oh yeah.
Battlefields. Yeah. I've had, I've, lived in a haunted mansion one time. That was fun. For about a year, we lived in this
Wow.
pine. It was like a lumber baron. had this mansion that he made, and it had been turned into a bed and breakfast. And my mom and I ran this bed and breakfast when I was in eighth grade, and it was in a different town than we had lived in before. But it was like that was like haunted, and there was like a lot of experiences that we would see figures moving in and out of different rooms. Things would go missing, that kind of typical, haunted poltergeist type activity. Never malicious, just kind of, oh, this is kind of weird. Sometimes on the farm we would see like, my ex stepfather, his father passed away, and shortly before one of my siblings was born. And but I sometimes occasionally, everyone that lived on the farm there had experiences where we saw him walking through the corn near us or around us or something. But that was always kind of a calming thing. Yeah, I don't know. I've had a variety of. I've only ever seen one full sort of like a spectral apparition, I guess.
Oh yeah.
And that, yeah. So I went. I was about 8 or 9 at the time. Maybe it was somewhere between 6 and 8. And basically, my mom was out in the garden area. We had a large garden off the side of one of the farmhouse, and it was on the property, but it was kind of down the road a little bit and past my grandpa's trailer and whatever. So we she was sort of doing stuff, and I was she asked me to go get something or look for a farming implement, like a hoe or a rake or something. And so I was like, something to do. So I went to the old corn bin that we had, because I thought that sometimes we stored things in there. And when I walked into the corn bin, it was so bizarre because it was kind of an overcast day. But when I walked inside, there was like sunlight coming through the slats of the top of this corn bin, and it looked like it was like the golden hour, like when the sun's setting. And so
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's bizarre. But then I see in front of me like this kind of like old, like there's an old man, and he looks almost like he's made out of like I don't know how to describe it. Like he's dusty. He's entirely dusty, like he had been in dust,
Wow.
and his skin was kind of like leathery, and it was like kind of like almost like cracked or something like that. And he had a very sort of haggard look to him, but he was dressed in kind of 1930s, 1940s farmhand look to him. And I remember his boots were leather and they were cracked, and his skin was like the same texture almost. But it was just kind of like it wasn't
Wow.
unnormal. It was just sometimes when old people have skin that's kind of leathery or gets kind
Yeah.
of a texture to it. And so anyway, so he's sitting there shucking corn. He's sitting on a bucket, and he just smiles at me and goes back to shucking corn. And I was just kind of like, oh, this is so. It was like it was just like a dream, almost like a dream, right? You're almost like in a dream state
Yeah.
at that point. And
Wow.
so and it's wild. And so I'm like, okay, that's really bizarre. So I go and like I was like, I didn't even look for the farm implement. I went to go tell my mom what happened. Well, I walk out of the corn bin, the corn crib that we had, and I look around, and it's the same. It's no longer overcast. There's the sun is setting. It's golden hour, and I'm like, well, that's very bizarre. So I like go looking for my mom. My mom's not in the field, and so that she was like, I think we were planting potatoes or something, or watermelon. I can't remember what exactly was going into the earth at that point in time. But like anyway, so we're because we had a pumpkin patch over there, we had a
Yeah.
watermelon patch, and we also raised our own potatoes and stuff. And there we had rhubarb and everything that you can imagine. So, but anyway, so I run back to my house, up to the farmhouse that we lived in, and my mom was like, "Where did you go?" And I was like, I went looking for the thing, and I told her the whole story, and she's like, oh yeah, she's like, well, our family, we have kind of like, some are more sensitive than others, but we have like a lot of like sensitivity to kind of ghost, type stuff. So if you see stuff like that, like if you feel like you're in danger, just run away or whatever. But like usually,
Wow.
whatever, don't be too scared by it. You know what I mean? And I don't know if she
Yeah.
was just telling me that so I wouldn't freak out, but apparently I like a great deal of time had passed, like, between an hour and a half. But she thought that I
Uh,
just like went to go look and then got distracted because, that's an
yeah.
ongoing theme in my life. But again, the chaos. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, it was very, very weird. But yeah, I've lived in some other haunted places and stuff. But yeah, I've had a lot of different experiences. I've got a handful, but I don't want to keep you all day with them. So.
And the question now is that, like, do you believe those are real, or do you believe as a kid you were impressionable? Because I had some
I mean, like
experiences.
I have no choice but to believe. I saw these things with my own eyes. One of the freakiest things that I ever saw was I was on the. This is another farm story. I was on the farm and I was very young. I was probably we just moved there, so I was like 5, 4, 5, maybe as old as 6. But I was like, I was walking and there's these sort of like grown up grass shoots that had kind of grown up out of the ground, and I think maybe it was like I can't remember if they were like corn stalks or what exactly they were, but like it was tall grass basically. And so I'm walking, and right at my eye level, I see this fully formed but miniature owl, and it's an owl. It was about 3 inches tall, but it wasn't like an owl chick or whatever the term for a small owl is. It wasn't an owl baby owl. It was a fully grown owl, but it was miniature. It was like 3 inches or 4 inches tall. And I was staring, I was looking at it right, it was right at my eye level, like I was supposed to see it, but it wasn't a figurine. It was moving. It was looking right at me, but it was a fully grown owl. And I'm 6 years old at this point, so like if it were a big owl, I would have run away because birds can be terrifying. But like it was 2 or 3 inches tall, and it was just sitting on this like perch on this like kind of bent piece of stalk or grass or whatever it was. I don't know if it was my imagination or what it was, but I just remember clear as day seeing it and just being like completely like mystified about like what I saw. And I told my mom, and my mom kind of, just kind of, was like, oh, okay, that's nice. But it was just kind of like that was it wasn't scary necessarily, but like that was the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. Because it was a fully developed like owl, like an actual owl, but it was 2 or 3 inches tall. It was miniature. I can't explain that. Like that's the only thing that I've not been able to process. Like we have stories about like I know what a ghost is. I've seen ghosts. I've seen there was a malicious entity that lived in one of my grandparents' houses before they moved, and it tried to trick me into going into the basement by tricking me with a Lex Luthor action figure from the from the Superpowers line. Where that was a really freaky experience because I heard my grandpa asking me to come down and help him where he cracked walnuts in this basement of his house. And I was walking down the steps, and I was like, "Grandpa, are you sure?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, come down here, come down here. I got you a toy. I got you the this superpowers Lex Luthor action figure that I had seen one of my cousins had, and I was like very like I was like, oh yeah, I was like I do you want it? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, come down here and help me with the walnuts. And so I'm like walking down the steps, and I just get this really bizarre feeling, and I was like, I don't know, like this. He doesn't ever want me to hang out with the walnuts down there, like because there's like dangerous stuff down there in the basement. And all of a sudden, I hear the door open, and lo and behold, so I like run back up the steps, and my grandpa walks through the door of his house, and it wasn't him; it was something else that was trying to lure me into that basement. And that was really freaky. That was really a scary experience. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've had so many experiences over the course of time. Thankfully, less and less as I get to be an adult. But like, it's one of those things where it's just kind of like, I mean, there has to be something else going on. I'm less interested in what is actually happening than like, I guess like I just never had a problem with it. And I'm not going to like, is it, an alternate universe bleeding into ours? Is it, the resonance? Is it like an actual spiritual thing where it's like people have unfinished business and that's where ghosts come from, or they're malicious entities that come from some other place or some other time, or maybe they're just drawn to places where ley lines intersect. There's all these different ideas. But it's always interesting to me to hear people talk about that. But I don't know if I have like a pinned down belief in them, but I do have a belief in them because I've had all these really, really bizarre experiences. Lots of coincidences have happened in my life. Being at the right place at the right time, or being in the exact wrong place at the wrong time. Feeling like I'll go and when I was younger in my early 20s, having that feeling like I've slipped into a different universe and things just feel off, and there's things that are slightly the wrong way, or going back to a place that you remember very vividly and it's always been a different than it was how you remembered it. So it could be
Yeah.
tricks of the mind, or it could be a Mandela effect, or it could be that literally the universe, different multiverses, kind of like vibrated different
Yeah.
speeds, and we slip between them unknowingly. Whether it's like how many seats were in the car that JFK was shot in. It's like, was it four or was it two? And it's our two extra in the back, and it's kind of like one of those things where it's kind of like but and you talk, I always been very open talking to people about this, where I'm just like, I don't care if people think it's weird or not. I definitely believe in the supernatural, but I'm willing to give credence to the fact that like the human brain is so complex that we just get
Oh
things
yeah.
wrong all the time. You know what I mean? I'll walk into a room and forget what I'm doing in there constantly. So it could just be
Yeah.
that like these are, whatever. It could be anything. So I don't
Yeah.
know, but like I've had a ton of experiences, so I'm definitely willing to believe.
Yeah, and even so, maybe the supernatural is natural. We were just not able to naturalize it and understand it, and create rules to be able to measure it yet. And
Right.
I don't know, yeah, because a lot of stuff we're just discovering as we go, right? Like we're very far, but it's still, we have a lot of place to go yet as humans, and even as science or anything like this. And
Yeah, no,
and
I mean it could be anything. Yeah.
yeah, and what I was going to ask you is about spirituality and religion or anything. Since you believe in the supernatural, do you have any kind of spirituality or religion, or even philosophy that helps you guide you through life and understand like these mysteries of existence?
I grew up in a lot of different we church hopped a lot, so I've been, part of many Christian denominations. I was baptized Catholic. I was rebaptized in a post-apostolic sort of not underground church. What are those called? Sort of like small church, evangelical small church. And then I was also baptized in the Reformation branch of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then that was all before my eighth grade year when I was confirmed Lutheran. So I've had like a very wide range of church experiences, and I don't necessarily have a certain dogma. The older I get, the more I'm like, I guess like I always really enjoy talking to people that have a deep personal faith in something, whether it's a religion, or they have their own set of beliefs. But like I I guess I kind of really lend credence to that. Maybe it's all real. Like it's all of us processing the same information the same way, or in different ways, but like the same wavelength or the same whatever. But again, like I guess like I really enjoy the idea of spirituality and the idea of religion. But like I haven't really ever um, as an adult had a very set dogma that I follow. But I get most of my, I always say like, it's like, well, most of my morality came from Sunday school stuff. and then also, Silver Age comics, growing up reading Silver Age comics. So, it's like, yeah, but I read the Bible a lot as a kid, and I was definitely interested in it. But I think, like, a lot of the draw there too was the epics of, in especially in the Old Testament, of who begat who, and all these, ancient warrior kings, and ancient battles, and the Book of Revelation with all of its kind of like gonzo type, imagery and things of that nature always really appealed to me. So I was always, as a child, I was very religious, but I was always really drawn to the sort of mystical, and then also to, the sort of things. And I guess that would inform later on my, kind of draw to fantastical warrior, wizard, divine power, all that stuff, that I guess, like, maybe that part of that bled over into my interest in fantasy RPGs, and then also too, like Lord of the Rings, and the Book of Narnia and things like that were kind of like, approved reading in a lot of churches, especially for, young men. And so that kind of like really informed, I guess, like a lot of my like things. But yeah, like I don't have necessarily, again, I kind of go with the flow. I don't really have a set belief in one thing. I think many things can be true. Many things can be partially true or fully true. But I don't have. I try to keep a really decent moral code. I just try to do the best that I can. And a lot of my adult views on philosophy were inspired by like Kurt Vonnegut. I started reading Kurt Vonnegut when I was in my late teens and early 20s, and that really, his sort of humanitarian view of the world kind of really rubbed off on me. But as far as like actual like I'm not a person that necessarily has one sort of faith that I believe in. I guess kind of have like a very loose collection of ideas about the way that the cosmology of the world works and stuff. But I'm never going to go out on a limb and tell anyone else that they're wrong about something, because I don't know. And as long as they're like, it enriches them and they're not being like a jerk about it, like, more power to them. Absolutely. I love hearing about other people's religious practices and beliefs. Like, it's so fascinating to me. That I always love that chance to hear,
Yeah, and we can know if they're right or wrong. I mean, as long as they don't take this as absolute truth and everybody has to believe in what they believe, I mean, who cares? if that helps them to deal with the world and be a better person, that's the thing, right? Like philosophy or this things that you believe have to help you grow and be better, and not stagnant and say, oh, this is how it is, and you have to follow what I believe, or you're my enemy, or things like this. That's the worst part of this. I don't know, different philosophies you might have about everything, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm never willing to tell anyone they're wrong, but I'm always willing to listen to what they think is right. So,
Yeah. And sometimes helps you understand your own beliefs. Like I'm an atheist, and then I heard recently a comedian I like a lot called Pete Holmes. Oh, we talked about Pete Holmes.
Oh,
right?
I love Pete Holmes. Yeah. Crashing is one of my favorite all-time TV series. And he's just, everything he does is great. I love Pete Holmes.
Yeah. And now I was listening to his podcast, and he was talking about how comedians are generally all atheists, and they always say, oh no, man, this makes no fucking sense. Nothing makes sense. And makes no sense there's an afterlife. And he goes, but does this make sense? Does life make sense? Life makes no sense at all. So it actually is a precedent for afterlife that makes no fucking sense, because this makes no fucking sense. And then he goes, and they all say, oh, how life started, oh, how everything started, oh, there was the Big Bang. What was before the Big Bang? Nothing. There was nothing before the Big Bang, man. Nothing. And when you die, and what happens when you die? When you die, there's nothing happens, man. Nothing. You go to nothing. Oh, so you go back to your creator then. You die and you go back to nothing that created everything. And then I was like, holy fuck. Even like atheism has this like going back to to the
It
nothing,
yeah,
which
it,
created
it
everything.
definitely has
Yeah,
that sort of if you look at it from a certain perspective, there's a lot of similarities between both belief
yeah,
and non-belief, I think, sometimes.
yeah,
And especially people who are very dogmatic about non-belief, where it's like, it's like, I mean, like, I personally, like, I have a lot of beliefs, I guess, but like I also too don't have a codified single belief, single way of doing things. So but yeah, that is really interesting. But I mean, Pete, the great thing about Pete Holmes is like you can really tell that he's just like he seems to be a very genuine person who like really is curious about other people's perspective on things. And a lot of times when you get like celebrity podcast interviewers, when you listen to his podcast, it never seems like he's just waiting for them to finish so he can say what he wants to say. He's always like really interested in what they have to say, and then we'll think about it for a second and then like try to like go deeper, which is like really great. And I think that like I'll give you a good compliment here. I think that you do that also on your podcast. I definitely see the influences from You Made It Weird to Weird Games and
yeah.
Weirder People. but
I'm trying to.
in,
Yeah, he's
in
a
in
model.
in the
Yeah.
best. But it's like it's great because it's like you get to talk to cool people like Alan Barr and Ava Islam and all
And
these other
you.
people. And, yeah, well, and me, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can lump me
I
into
mean,
the. I always
Pete
like to
Holmes
joke.
is on my list. Maybe one day I'll try to invite him,
Oh, that
but
would be
who
that would be
knows?
so awesome.
That would be
Yeah,
amazing. But yeah,
yeah, that would be so cool. Yeah. I always like to joke that like when it comes to like the modern sort of like, indie developer, there's just a ton of us running around, right? But I kind of feel like, the people that are in my friend group and kind of like online, creators and stuff like that, like, basically pick up Barkeep and see who's in there. And that's basically kind of, for the most part, who I run around with, and it's
yeah.
always like, sometimes it feels like I'm on the Justice League, but like I'm on the Justice League, but I'm also, like Plastic Man or something, where I'm like, I'm the goofy character that they keep around for like,
Yeah.
I'm useful. I'm very powerful, I guess, but like in the way that I do things, like Plastic Man. But like it's mostly just me goofing around and doing jokes and pranks and stuff like that. So but yeah,
Yeah, but Justice League wouldn't be the same without him. So that's
absolutely,
another thing
absolutely,
uh
yeah,
that you always see like these big names like Einstein or like Picasso or anything. But beside those people, there's all this scene of a lot of people doing a lot of work that influence these people. Maybe they didn't get as famous or anything, but we are all part of this scene, this community that's helping build each other. There's obviously some people will rise above everybody else and
sure.
makes millions of dollars on Kickstarters and go to Icebreaker and be featured in Critical Role or all these great things. That sometimes we might ask, oh, why not us? But like we are part of this. We are somehow we can see with them there. We can see ourselves with them there, even though we are not. So
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know.
for sure. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's and I mean, I'm just super, super, super happy and I guess, blessed, I think to be like part of, someone to do stuff with,
yeah,
people that I admire. But also too, I came in kind of like I didn't really know a lot about the scene before I showed up in it, I guess. So it was kind of like, people always be like, oh, you're friends with, so and so, you're friends with and it's like yeah, but I just know them as like goofy friends of friends, acquaintances from people that like
yeah,
I know that are like whatever. Oh, this person made
yeah,
this game or whatever, and it's like, well, I've never played it, but I'm sure it's great, whatever. But it's kind of like, one of those things too, and I get maybe that's like a privileged position to say, like, because like a lot of people be like, oh my gosh, you got to be in this, like, all the cool stuff, all the cool games that
yeah,
I've, gotten to draw for and be part of, and it's like that's cool, it's awesome, but it's also too like one of those things where it's kind of like you can't like you're like a giant, you can be like the biggest fish in the tiniest fish bowl. Like our hobby is not like outside of like obviously like Wizards of the Coast and a lot of like Free League and like
yeah,
those other things, which no disrespect to any of that stuff. I like and ingest a lot of that stuff. I love playing games. I love playing popular games and unpopular games, or games that aren't popular yet, or games that should be
yeah,
popular and aren't. But like it's one of those things where it's just like there's a name brand recognition of stuff, but then it's like, our hobby is only so big, and it's like, you can't really, the people at the supermarket don't know or care if I'm Hodag RPG or not. They just want me to swipe my card and,
Yeah,
get
of
out of
course.
there. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Yeah. And so
Yes.
it's not
Yes.
like, it's not like, but like, it is nice to be recognized in the industry. And it's like, I just genuinely like working with people, and, I help a lot
Yeah.
of people out. I try to do stuff like, especially with like, the exchange rate for like Latin America sucks so much that a lot of times I'll just like offer art for free, because it's like, I'm not going to take, I think it's what, like 20 cents to the American dollar down there or something, for you all.
Yeah. It
Yeah. And
is. It's like
it's like,
five
I'm not going to
reais. It's
charge you.
$1. Yeah.
Right. I'm not gonna charge someone, it's like, I will help you with your game. That's the reason I always have like a clause in my games where I'm like, if you're from Latin America and if you're part of the RPG Latam, kind of thing, like just email me and I'll email you my game for free. I don't want you to spend any money on it. But the exchange rate is so awful that like I would rather you not spend any money on it, because it's not going to be worth the hassle and the processing fees for me. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
it's like, and I don't want to take your money, because your money could be better used for things, So it's kind of like, but I don't know. And like, I have that same kind of, thing where it's like, because like when I get, something from Canadians or whatever, or, people from Great Britain, like there's always the exchange rate, like always like makes it a little bit of a sweeter deal too. So it's kind of like, that's nice.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you get to give and then you get to get. So it's like, it's good. But yeah, it's just like,
For
and also
sure.
too, it's just really nice to have help with games from people all over the world. It's like I said, like I kind of really consider myself to be like a person, a
Yeah.
citizen of the world, and kind of a more
It,
globally
it
minded
creates.
person as one and all.
Yeah. It creates those connections. I said, like human connections. That we talked about how AI is severing. Like you're creating this connection to someone else that asks you to make the illustration. You're making something together that you wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to make alone, and then wouldn't be able to make alone, even if they use AI. Wouldn't be a collaboration, and that's something so human and so good, and I don't know. It's one of my favorite parts, how we make stuff together, and yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Before we go back to the AI rants, that's just
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
going.
Let's
Yeah.
we'll steer the ship around it. We'll
Yeah.
just steer the ship right around
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, Hodag, if you could
yeah.
have any superpower you can imagine, what would you choose, and what would be the first thing you would do with that?
So I really I don't I don't know. This is like a really hard question for me, because obviously I'm a big superhero fan. So there's like a lot of like different superpowers that would be pretty
The
cool. Like,
first one that comes to your mind, like just the first one.
yeah, I guess like, okay, so one time I read an interview like during like Obama's like first administration or whatever, and he said that if he could have any superpower, he would want to have, like, I think it was a Wizard magazine, said that he would want to have like the ability to speak any language. And I always thought that would be kind of cool. But like the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I think that I would really like the ability to kind of like maybe like time travel, but not to like maybe just observe, not actually go there, but like time viewing, like the Watcher or something, Uatu the Watcher, and just be able to like, and
Yeah,
maybe even see
like
time
a
and
time
space.
flicks.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly, or like a multiverse. Like I could like see a multiverse where, like certain outcomes had happened, certain different alternate histories, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that that's very interesting to me. So maybe I'd like to be able to see different universes where different choices were made, or be able to see different timelines or different futures or different paths or something.
Yeah, yeah. You would like to explore different realities the way you do with RPGs,
Yeah,
somehow. And my
exactly, exactly.
yeah,
I'm naturally curious, so I think that
yeah,
I would get a big kick out of being able to view another world, you know?
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense, especially as you said, you're like a word builder, and
Yes,
you like
yeah.
to express that through your creation. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, and if you could choose any weird and fantastical thing from the fiction, for the games, from the our imaginations, and make it real in our real world, what would you choose and why?
Oh, cure disease, like the D&D spell cure disease, I think would be really
Oh yeah,
cool because then you could just like, I mean, just imagine magical healing, man. Like you could just like, you could cure the coronavirus, you could cure, I mean, mummy rot, you could cure cancer, you could cure anything. Like, I mean, like, that magical healing, that's good. That's that
yeah,
divine healing. I think that would be so sick because it would be like, I think it would, help out a lot. Maybe I'm just
yeah.
saying this, 3 years into a
A
pandemic,
pandemic,
but
yeah,
like, yeah. I think that maybe that's coloring my thing, but like, I think that like, yeah, to be like able to like cure disease or cure, or like even like magical healing where you could like, someone has like a broken bone, like they come into the emergency room and they like broken their arm and you can just like, lay on hands or whatever, and then like that just heals their arm automatically. No, like, physical therapy, no, you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it would be, yeah, magical healing would be awesome. So yeah, I guess that, or
yeah.
lightsaber. Yeah, go the
Or
other
a
way and
lightsaber,
just
yeah,
have,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
they are equally important, I would say.
That's correct. Yeah, that's both true and real, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
They go very well together too, like those Jedi that heal people. So
Right.
yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, if you get your arm cut off, it's already solderized. So
Yeah,
that's
so
like they
it's
don't. You're
kind of
not going to
both
bleed
in one
out.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
unless you're Ponda Baba and then you have blood for some reason. But like, we don't know how the
yeah,
aliens work.
yeah,
Maybe they can't cauterize. Maybe, yeah. But anyways, yeah. Yeah,
yeah. Okay, so Hodag, like for my final question, it's something I've
sure.
come up recently. So, uh, do you remember the last time you were really happy and grateful for being here, being alive, and stuff like this? And can you share with us how was that and when?
Yeah, I guess like, there are a couple of things in my personal life that made me feel like that, but I mean, I'm gonna say this, not to be, flexing on people and, dunking on people in the last question here, but when we won the Ennie for Barkeep, like I feel like that was a big culmination, not only, big giant win for Birdman and all of I was so happy for my friends, but it's like I've been, working very hard and working on a lot of, and cynically, playing the numbers game, I guess, because like eventually, there was a very good chance that I was going to be part of something that won something. But just because of the sheer amount of art that I do, but like it was cool to be part of that team and to be like and to have seen it basically grow from the seeds of the idea all the way up through getting brought in for art and doing and being in not just me but like everybody. I just felt like really it was like a really it was a really nice moment when, and I got to watch it, the live stream live to see us win, and it was just like I just was like I felt very grateful and connected to everybody in both my friends but also too just the community, because it was like it was a really cool thing to be like, it's very easy to be cynical about like a lot of the stuff in the hobby and kind of the glad handing and the and everybody's kind of got their own little circles and weird stuff, and but it was like it was very, I felt very very happy and very connected to the people around me when we won the Ennie, and then WF
Yeah,
Smith, who I call him Birdman because he's got the bird logo on the prismatic
yeah,
wastelands is kind of the bird logo, but I just call him Birdman all the time. So anyways, but as a kind of an inside joke. But yeah, so that was really cool. But I felt really, really grateful and connected in that moment to pretty much everybody in the industry because it just kind of felt like, it was a very cool thing, and I was just
Yeah.
very, very elated and happy, and it felt right, and it was awesome. No disrespect to,
Yeah.
whoever we won against, but you know what I mean? It was a
Yeah, I
cool
mean
thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a celebration. It's not against them. It's just celebrating your work. We're celebrating them too, like being nominated. I remember when House of the Blood King announced that they were being nominated, and for me, that was already an award. I mean, I would never
Yeah.
imagine anything
Yeah.
I had made would be nominated for such a big thing, and for me that was all. And I would never imagine I would possibly win against such big people that I admired and been following for such a long time. And as you said, like somehow winning that makes you feel connected to the community in a way that you couldn't believe you were. Like these people really appreciate what I'm doing here, and you see the message you receive from people, and for me, like as you said, I'm being from Latin America, I always felt like an outsider. I wasn't collaborating with all those people I admire, and one of the reasons I started writing in English and I get some shit here in Brazil because I write in English and not in Portuguese, is because I wanted to connect it to these creators that I admired, and through the award somehow that made me realize and see that I'm doing this and helped me reach to this level. So it's just great. But yeah, but at the same time, it's something that I have to try to remember to forget too, because it's something. Yeah, we won. It's great. But I have to keep doing this and keep doing stuff that I like and not take the award as something. Yeah, I did it and it's done. And it's not,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Well,
not be obsessed to win another one too. Like, fuck this. It's great, but it's one of my mottos for my life that helped me with anxiety is this too shall pass. So it's
mm,
even for my award. Like, it's great, but this too shall pass, and next year nobody cares about this. So just keep doing. I don't have to care about this. I just have to keep doing what I like to do. Right? Do you feel something
yeah.
like this, or is it too recent
No,
for you yet?
I mean, I again, I'm not above it at all. Like, I'm not like, when a person's like, I really felt the deep, love and respect, that was, given to that project. But I was just really happy for the people around me. So no shade to that, but also too, I guess like, I not that I was, I don't want to say like something where I was like, oh, I was above it. But again, like I feel like even making my offhand comment about playing the numbers game, where it was kind of like, where it's like, surely one of these projects that I've helped on, but whether it's, the golden age of Karis, or, and it like, some things you never know what's going to strike the imaginations of the people who play indie games, and or just games at all. And so, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I've seen my stuff pop up, and, I was like, oh yeah, I remember working on that, and it'll finally come out, and it'll come out and people will be very excited about it. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, or, like
Yeah,
stuff that like, yeah. So it's just, it's again, it's one of those things too, where it's kind of like, it's neat. I'm not going to dwell on it. It's not like a thing where it's like, but also too, it's like, it is nice to be able to say like, well, I'm an Emmy award winning, blah blah blah. Like, not that I do that a lot, but like, what I mean,
yeah,
like, it's kind of like one of those things where it's kind of like,
yeah,
it also too, it's like nice to sell myself, a little bit as an artist. Be like, well,
yeah. Sure.
I do have a golden Ennie. So that's the kind of quality that I bring to my very professional work, and I'm always on time with everything, and or whatever. And it's like, but
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's a nice feather in the cap, but it's not the whole hat,
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, Hodag, I think those are all my questions, and I'm really grateful for you being here and sharing a little bit about yourself, like this weird childhood you have, like this supernatural whirlwind of things, and it's really really fascinating and influence your art in some ways, and how we were able to connect and make create some relationships of the stuff that you said, and the games was very interesting. And I love it how we praised our peers and artists, and I think that's great. And really thank you for it. Do you have any last message for the weirdos at home that are listening to us?
Yeah, don't get eliminated. It's an old
Okay.
most extreme challenge, but yeah, no, I'm joking. I'm not joking. Please don't get eliminated. Don't get eliminated.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that, like, in a world that is ever increasing with anxiety, war, famine, plague, dealing with the consequences of climate change and everything else, world's on fire. But I just want to give a big shout out to everybody who's continuing to make art, and even in the darkest times and everything else, it's like, there's joy and sad and sorrow, and it's always been that way. But I feel like, we live in a very unstable time, and I just am always strengthened and bolstered, and want to give, like, just so much love to the people that are continuing to make art despite, all of these things happening. And it's like, sometimes it's hard to do, sometimes sometimes I feel like it's pointless too, where it's just kind of like, but I make art not because I want to, but because I feel compelled to. And I know so many other artists do that also, and it's just one of those things where it's like, I just want to give a big shout out to everybody who's continuing on to make art, even in uncertain times. Yeah. So.
Yeah, for me, I've discovered it's almost like self-care. And there's a phrase that I love that says, most of the artist's problems comes from avoiding the art. And then, yeah, because it is kind of therapeutic, because we have all these problems from our lives, daily lives, day job, marriage, kids, family, and friends and stuff. And sometimes we feel we can't work on our art because we have all this stuff on our heads. But I think art is a great place for you to take out that and put away for at least a few minutes every day and do something, create it, and you feel yourself again, and you can go back to all those problems and stuff you have to deal with some reassurance that you have this creative, almost this divine spark inside of you. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it makes total. Yeah.
Makes total sense to me. But yeah, and also too, it's like, you just gotta, like, not let that spark go out. You gotta tend that flame, and sometimes it's gonna be the flame's gonna be 9 feet tall, and sometimes the flame's gonna be down to embers, but you just gotta keep it alive,
Yeah, for sure. And if it's died, you can rekindle. Just try to come back to it, and to help you with other stuff in your life. And I realized that if I'm able to work, even if it's 15-30 minutes a day in something creating, I get energy to do other stuff better. So that's something that I would say connects to the thing you said to the weirdos out there. So make art and just be weird, and it will heal you, it will help you, I think.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So, well, hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming, and we will do this again. And I have plans to inviting more guests, and we do like a round table, and we can get weird with some topic. And,
definitely. I think we talked about fun artists. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit before, and I'm definitely. I got lots of ideas about druids, so have me on that one for sure. Yeah. And if I get Pete Holmes here in the day, if you have any questions you want to suggest as a fellow Pete Holmes fan, please let me know, because I definitely Pete Holmes is one of my favorites. So I'm building courage to send him an email. Who knows? It can happen. Or weirder things make like an open letter or something, because I think this podcast wouldn't exist without him. So I at least wanna say thanks to that. So So absolutely, weirdos at home. Thank you so much for listening, and keep it weird, people. Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to code-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.